have a lively discussion, hopefully, with the panel here. I want to ask you a few questions. And they're just to ponder for now. One, and I want you, if you answer yes to these questions, please stand up. And if you answer no, remain seated. First question is, how many here have a family member who has been or is currently incarcerated? Okay, now the second question is, how many people here have friends who have been or are currently incarcerated? I'd like you to remain standing, by the way, if you were answered yes to the previous question. Sorry. Last question. Please be seated if these were not for drug-related offenses. Now look around the room. I'd like everyone to consider the following question. Why do you think it's been so simple for many of us to be unaware that mass incarceration has been occurring in locations less than 1 hour away?
Can you repeat the question?
Why do you think it's been so simple for us to ignore that mass incarceration has been occurring in locations less than 1 hour away? And I want you to just ponder that for now. Now that we have our panel down here. And our panelists will offer perspectives on the answer to that question, as well as others. Some of them through personal experience. You could have a seat. No, stand. Our panelists will offer their own perspectives on mass incarceration, some through personal experience, but all through their dedicated commitment to exposing the injustice of the American justice system as it currently functions. Please welcome them. So first I want to just have our panel members introduce themselves. So maybe we'll start down at the end with actually the filmmaker. And I'm going to keep you all to 3 minutes, if I can, in introducing yourselves, and give any relevant background information, what your involvement with this issue is, what work you've done.
Okay. My name's Matt Pilisher. I was the producer and director of the movie we just watched. I'm an activist, a lawyer, and an artist, and I live in Philadelphia, and I started making this movie towards the end of my law school education in 2009. And I started really making it about the Philadelphia prison system, the Philadelphia jail system, to go along with a lawsuit that I was working on with a civil rights law firm. They were suing the prisons in the city for overcrowding, some of which you saw. And I thought, you know, the public doesn't really know what's going on, and I thought there would be some kind of should be some kind of public education piece to the lawsuit, you know, because I think that wall is there not only to keep prisoners in, but to keep us out from knowing what's going on. So I started the movie, and I made one version that was sort of all about the Philadelphia jails overcrowding, showed that, and then I kept working on it and really expanded it to sort of use Philly as an example for the national problem, looking at systemic racism and, you know, all the issues you just saw. And in the meantime, the Occupy movement popped up and a lot of other organizing. So I finished it about a year ago, and I've been touring the movie as much as I can, getting it out there. It's a very grassroots, very independent, low-budget guerrilla filmmaking movie. So if you all liked it, please spread the word, because that's my major PR campaign, is word of mouth, and like it on Facebook and all that stuff. And you know, I'm really excited to see this great turnout, and you know, thank you all for being here.
I'm Todd Metz. I work with a youth-led organization called YAS, Youth Art and Self-Empowerment Project. I'm also a member of the Incarcerate PA. I've been working here since November of this year, well, last year. And so far, I've been doing a lot of workshops in schools far as art, poetry, structural violence, peer pressure, and things in that nature. And I'm excited to be here. Kind of nervous, but I'm gonna pass it on.
My name is Shauna Hirschberger, and I'm here because I was born and raised in Schwenksville, about 10 minutes down the road. And my experience of Graterford growing up was I often thought it was the sun coming up because I could see the lights, and that's what I thought it was as a child. And I think that really kind of illustrates how maybe Montgomery County, and especially the surrounding area of Graterford, feels about the prison. We really don't know very much. I was a kid that kind of had to beg my dad to let me take photography classes in Philly because I was going to get shot, in his opinion. And now I'm a social work student. I'm a graduate social work student at Smith, and I saw this film when Matt came up this summer at my college or at my grad school to show it, and it really kind of opened my eyes about what's going on in Philadelphia. And now I'm a therapist in the city, and I see so many clients that are really affected by this. And it hit me just how hard it is for people, and realizing that I grew up right next to it and had no idea. And so now my job with Decarcerate, I'm with an organization called Decarcerate Pennsylvania that I'm sure you guys got a lot of different flyers. I'm working with them to do their Montgomery County outreach because I think that we all need to wake up out here, and I think the people in this area, if they knew what was really going on, I believe wholeheartedly that they would act. And I just think it's a matter of getting the word out there. And so that's my position on this issue.
My name is John Harrell, and I run the Center for Returning Citizens. And as you saw from the film, one of the actors was speaking about how there should be reentry and pre-entry. Well, we do both. We work with ex-offenders as they come home, trying to find new jobs, referring them to necessary services, and doing whatever is necessary to smooth their reentry. And we also work with offenders who have been able to get out on bail, and they come to us, and we also find them jobs, refer them to services, do a lot of counseling, and try to prepare them so when they go back to court, they won't get time. My background is I came home in September 2009 after serving 18 years on a 20-year sentence for bank robbery and weapons charges. I used to think that robbing banks was the most fun you could have with your clothes on. It was kind of back in the day. During the course of my incarceration, I was blessed to come into the association and the circle of Dr. Matul Shakur. Does anybody know that name? Is it familiar? Anybody know Tupac? It's his stepfather. When you get a chance, Google Matul Shakur. He's a black nationalist, a wonderful African elder, and he has literally trained and sent from prison hundreds of young men to go back to their communities and to work in the communities. I worked with him for 12 years. We worked with Gangster Disciples, Latin Kings, Crips and Bloods, young brothers who were tired of the criminal lifestyle and wanted to go home and do good things. I came home in 2009. I earned my associate's degree while I was inside. I earned my bachelor's degree last year. I'm in the master's program at Temple, and I run the Center for Returning Citizens, and we do a lot of good things. And I'm here to talk to you about that and other things about mass incarceration.
My name is Anthony Dickerson. From Philadelphia, formerly incarcerated. I just served 10 years at Graterford. While I was incarcerated, in the process of doing my own case, litigating my own case, I built up a reputation for doing legal cases, helping people with their cases. Upon my release, I got recruited by a gentleman who runs the Philadelphia Innocence Project, so now I'm doing research with them. Became a decarcerated member, and I met him, and through him, he assisted me in finding work and things of that nature. And basically, I'm just here to give any insight in what it's like being on the inside, if you have any questions.
I'm Roger Florka. I teach here at Ursinus in the philosophy department. I guess I'm here because I teach a course on the philosophy of race, which I'll be teaching in the fall. Come on down.
open up the floor to questions and answers from the audience. I'm sure you have lots of questions just bubbling over the edge. So it can be directed to someone in particular or the whole panel. Will?
I guess this would be directed to the whole panel and whoever feels they have a burning opinion on the issue. What would you think would be one of the crucial first steps into propagating such a movement amongst people in this area, but also people outside this area and like people you come in contact with? Like, what do you think is the best way to spread this information?
So, I guess I'm part of an organization called Decarcerate Pennsylvania, and we have a 3-point platform, which is to stop the building of new prisons, cut down on the prison population through changing legislation and mandatory minimum laws, things like that, and also to put money back into education. And so we're an organization that we do action work, we're writing op-eds, we're doing things like this, coming out to different schools and universities, trying to connect with as many people as possible. And we've also done, I don't know if any of you heard about our direct action that we did on November 19th. They set up, 7 people set up school desks and a mock schoolhouse behind them. And they blocked the access road to Graterford Prison right off of Route 73. Those are some of the things that we're doing, as well as organizing call-in days and having people like you sign our platforms. So that's just some of what we're doing. Does anyone want to add?
I think,
You can go now.
I think it's really important to touch people where they live. Like, so many people stood up when the question was asked, do you know someone who's incarcerated? And many times, people don't really want to talk about that. They don't want to acknowledge it, especially in the black community. When the sister movie was talking about the shame in the black community, so many people I was incarcerated with didn't have people coming to visit them because they didn't want to go to prison. Many members of my family who I love and who have loved me their whole life wouldn't come to visit me in prison. They would say, I don't want to see you like that. But this is where I live. So if you love me, come see me, come support me. Let me still be a part of your life. And I think it's important to involve people and decarcerate. We try to work intensely with the family of the incarcerated and also the community. Because just in the city of Philadelphia, there's close to 300,000 formerly incarcerated people. That's a lot of people.
I think, you know, what you all could do is, if there's not already an anti-prisons group or like a chapter of Decarcerate PA here at this school, to start one. And the beginning is raising consciousness and educating people. So that's sort of what I'm really focused on with this movie, is that, you know, people know there's some racism in the system. We have a lot of people in jail and prison, but I don't think people know the whole history of it and the extent of it and the political framework to understand, to fight back. So I think that's the first step. I think, you know, doing a study group around some books. There's books like Lockdown America or The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander that, you know, are really good to go through chapter by chapter with a group of students and try and figure out like what this huge problem is. And then you can talk to family members, friends about it. So I think having, you know, some kind of study group around the movie or a book, and then starting to hold meetings on campus. And first, you know, reach out who's closest to you. Reach out to students that are like-minded. Then maybe try and have a meeting in the community where you get, you know, sort of an alliance between the student population and some people in the community. Because, I mean, decarcerated, I'm a member of Decarcerate PA too, and we're really trying to stop this prison expansion. They're building new prisons outside of Graterford, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes from here. And we don't have a whole lot of connections in this area, so you all would be crucial for that, and then reaching out to the community members would be crucial as well.
One thing that is going to happen is I'm going to put in a proposal to have The New Jim Crow, the book by Michelle Alexander, who's featured so prominently in the movie, as a CIE text for CIE 200. Now that proposal goes in during the summer, and then the CIE faculty discuss it probably in September. I think that's the usual format. And when that starts happening, word should get out that that's occurring, and then a few students speaking to faculty about their interest in having that book going to CIE might help. So we'll let you know when that's happening. But imagine the entire freshman class reading that book and confronting these issues. It would make a big difference here on campus. So that's one plan.
It's a wonderful book. If you're going to read another book this year, read that book.
This would be directed toward Dr. Florgo. Do you know if Ursinus is talking about still exists? And I feel like that would be a pretty cool thing to propose for Ursinus is talking about.
It does not exist.
Is there any possibility of
No.
it happening?
Well, there's no talk about it. I mean, it was funded by some grant that they got, and the money ran out, and nobody was talking about starting it. Now, I actually think, I think it would be better if the students started up on their own.
Right.
I mean, why wait for the damn company to do anything?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys could decide, Ursinus students are talking about, and you pick, start a group, pick a book that the students will read together, maybe invite the faculty, maybe not, and do it yourself. I mean, all it takes people putting out the money for the book. The advantage of getting the funding is we were able to buy all the books and distribute them. But there's ways around that.
There was someone just behind me who had his hand raised before. I think maybe Ronan?
Yeah, the last bullet point in the two slides when the movie ended, the last one mentioned the privatization of the prison system, and I was actually surprised that there wasn't more, I guess, done in the film about that. So how much has that kind of affected the drastic growth in the last 2 decades, and how can the movement specifically address the privatization problems of prisons? Because I feel like that problem is kind of very separate from the state problem, which is way more entrenched.
Anyone else want to say anything? I can speak to it.
Well, speak to first Dominic.
There's only so much you can do in 68 minutes, and I was trying to keep the movie as short as possible, and I sort of intentionally left that out except for the bullet point because I think sometimes people make too much of privatization that's the problem, and if we stop that, then it's okay. It's a particularly nasty problem, and as you can imagine, people who are running prisons for profit corporations trying to figure out how to cut costs, horrible things happen, and it's much harder to have government constitutional oversight. So I think there's a lot of problems with it. It's still a small percentage of the prisons that are privatized. However, there are all kinds of money interests involved with the public institutions. I mean, like who gets the contract to build them, who gets the contract to run the health services, the contract to make the food, to use the prison labor. I mean, so private or not private, there are huge money interests in the system. So I'll stop there, and maybe you want to say something.
And privatization isn't just in outside prisons, all right? I spent years and years in the federal prison system. Anybody ever heard of Unicor Industries? All right, Unicor is a huge industry. In every federal prison, there's at least one Unicor, and in many of them, several. And these are factories that make all manner of things. And I think our pay started out at 40 cents an hour, and the top pay was $1.20 an hour. And we are making products in competition with free market. So they're paying us $1 an hour. How much money are they making? It's incredible. That's inside of public prisons.
A lot of this stuff, like these, a lot of university furniture is made by federal prisoners.
Everything, almost everything in Congress. Desks, chairs, the printing, wiring is made in federal prisons.
I think we had Paul up here, but then Nick.
I want to take it on a total separate tangent, but I guess I'm just interested to hear, what do you guys think are a couple of the most prominent policies that are seemingly non-racist, but contribute mostly to, the disproportionate rate of arrests?
you start.
Let's just start with the crack law.
Yeah.
All right. This was around 1994. I was locked up for a year in a hole for leading a work strike against the crack law. I mean, even I was a bank robber. I mean, it was just so apparent. So many young guys were fighting in prison under the crack law. Under the crack law, you got 100 times more time for crack than you did for powder. It's the same damn thing. It's just cooked. But black and Hispanics were selling cracks. And that's what it was. It was a blatant attempt to just lock up a whole generation of young black people. I mean, it's incredible.
Another, not to go on the latter part after the arrest, there was a law passed called Post-Conviction Relief Act. They made amendments to it. And what that did was, so say if you got locked up, you were fighting your case or you want to appeal your conviction, they put it on a year time. So you don't have a lawyer, your lawyer bans you after you're found guilty. So you're on appeal, you know, so and say you, 13 months later, over a year, you find some evidence. Now you can't even get it in the court. They won't even hear it. And these are laws that are on the books, and the judge will be like, yeah, well, your time bar, you can't get it in, even if it proves your innocence. So a lot of this is what factors into the overcrowding. People can't get out even when they're innocent, you know, even when they had a proof. Can't get it in the court. So that's not just the arrest, but they got this thing set up on both sides.
It was a law passed in 1996 called Act 33. Act 33 is a law that allows juveniles under 18 to be tried directly as adults into adult facilities. So I just wanted to add that.
Do you think there's more, youth of color that are tried as adults?
Indeed.
I think, just quickly, the biggest way that I think people of color are churned through the system at these high rates, and it was said in the film, is discretion that we allow police and prosecutors. And, basically when, you're doing something that a cop thinks is bad, or you look at a cop funny and they don't like you, they have huge discretion about whether or not to charge you for, if you step on their foot, they're like, oh, no problem, or handcuffs, that's assaulting an officer, simple assault, aggravated assault, like really ridiculously overcharging people. And of course there's racial profiling. Well, you can't challenge things like that based on statistics. So like if you have one cop that has done, basically you look at his numbers and he's basically arrested 99% black people, 1% white people, you can't challenge that in courts. The only way to challenge it is if you hear him saying something racist, like, I'm gonna only lock up black people. And police just don't do that even if they think it nowadays. And the same is true of prosecutors. Prosecutors are allowed to just drop a case if they don't feel like pursuing it for whatever reason, or they can pursue it to the fullest extent of the law and not plea deal or anything like that. So that's where there's so much room for stereotypes and biases, or conscious or unconscious, to play a role in deciding, I'm going to try and lock this kid up. He's a bad kid. He's obviously a criminal. Versus, well, this guy just made a mistake. And you can imagine how that would play out in numbers of race. And the statistics really do show that. But the Supreme Court has said you can't challenge that in court.
And the power of the prosecutor is also magnified in terms of testifying against others. One of the reasons that I always got long sentences is because I refused to tell on someone else to shorten my sentence, simply because of my sense of what honor is. And that has really fallen off. In the system now, the prosecutors will trade one life for another. And it's amazing that that can happen in this country, but it's routine.
So I know we had Nick. Can I have everyone who's been waiting with a question raise their hand again? Okay. Okay, so I got an idea now. Nick, and then back up to there. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask all of you to answer this, so like I guess keep it brief so that people can ask questions. I know, like obviously Michelle Alexander's book is all about how this is a racial caste, how it like is specifically racialized. And I know like my experience is obviously different than a lot of yours, but I didn't have any concept of that except like vaguely through like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That was a thing that like racism was enacted through incarceration. So I was wondering like when, because I'm sure this is different for all of you, when you started to put together that this is like a new form of an old racial dominance.
The minute you get there, remember black people.
Would you feel that like you had any understanding of that before you got to prison, or was it like you got to prison? Like,
I mean, you hear it, but you don't, until you go, you know what I mean? It's one of those things. You hear a lot of stuff, but until you get there and you see hundreds. I mean, I ran into people that I hadn't seen in years. Like, that's where they are.
Where you been?
High school, where you been? If there's somebody you haven't seen in years, if you go to jail, that's where they are.
Good rest.
Well, I would say that what Dr. Alexander is articulating is something that many of us in the black community have been saying for years and years. I mean, my father's 86, and he tells me horrendous stories, you know, about Jim Crow and the black coats. He's born in 1927, and he tells me stories that makes my dreads curl up. I mean, it's just awesome. You know, so it's always been in our community. This is nothing new. It's just, you know, now being more publicized.
I mean, for me, it was really reading the book, and now reading The New Jim Crow is kind of what made it all click. I had a sense of it in different ways. I had, you know, worked in Florida as a therapist also, and you know, I saw some of the racial divide there, but it didn't really click for me until I was at, you know, my school, Smith, and like deconstructing all of these social constructs, and then reading this book and seeing the movie, honestly, is when it really solidified for me.
Well, I was a trouble kid, and I'm only 17. I graduated last year, and like I was always getting kicked out of school. So when I finally got kicked out of school in 5th grade and got sent to Daniel Boone, it clicked to me like, why did I do this? Why did this happen? It was questions that was unanswered. And then when I recently got incarcerated, it all clicked to me. Now I'm reading The Incarcerator 3, the new Jim Crow, and it's just all there. All the answers is there. So mass incarceration is definitely not a good look. It's really not.
I think, I mean, as is kind of clear from our answers, in the black community, it's like, you know, common sense. Like, people know it. Like, the cops are occupying their neighborhoods, pulling up, you know, not worrying about the 4th Amendment or anything. You know, for people like me who grew up in the suburbs, white, middle class, you know, I had some sense that there's racial disparities, and then becoming an activist, working around like anti-racist organizing, I learned more and more. But for me, it was also like reading The New Jim Crow that puts it all together in a way that really, you know, explains the argument, tons of facts and statistics to back it up, personal stories. And that's what really made it click for me, that like, really, this is a new racial caste system. And I had never, you know, felt like I could say that before. And now I feel like with confidence I can say that. And that's what made me want to make the movie, to be like, you know, I gotta spread this message. I mean, people just don't understand it outside of the black community, black and Latino community.
I grew up in Detroit, and I went to a mostly black high school, so I saw it happening. But I was just witnessing. I wasn't. Now I know where to go to see my old friends. But I just kind of like sort of knew it in that sort of sense of witnessing it. But again, the book makes it very clear in all the statistics and all the stories, and it's really a wonderful book, and that's what really solidified it for me.
Moral of the story, read the new Jim Crow. Want to take the questions up here? Jania?
I'm just wondering if any of you have any perspectives, from like black cops in Philadelphia specifically, as far as, maybe like them witnessing certain things or their participation in locking people up on the streets, because in a lot of the clips, like we saw, white cops and black cops participating in, like beating people on the streets and things like that. Like how does
There's a definite, cop culture. It's, with police, it's usually, them against us. There's a strong divide. My view of police is kind of jaded, because for so many years as a criminal, they were the enemy, and I was trying to maneuver around them. In our community, they do virtually whatever they want to do. I mean, if you're a cop in Philly, unless you are selling heroin in uniform,
right,
you can do whatever. And there's really no question unless every once in a while there's a really extreme case, like a cop shooting somebody in a bar and he's off duty, and it's, but other than that, I mean, they're gods in the city. Is that simple?
Black cops are really hard on black people because they can get away with it. You rarely see a black cop beat down a white person. They're not crazy. They know what they can get away with. And that's what they do. I mean, they take on the role. And it's almost like they try to show their white counterparts that, look, I'm with you. Watch this. And that's basically what you saw there, So they know where to draw the line.
But not all black cops. I mean, we don't want to make it seem like, all the cops in Philly are corrupt. Because there are some good cops. I mean, I know some cops who work in the community, and they're good people, and they do a lot of things. But there's a lot of them that are over the edge.
I would say the badge is all about power and honor. They want to show you that they're playing sides of defense. I have 2 family members that are a police officer now. One, he's not a good cop. He's not. But, I mean, to each his own. Somebody got to get by some way. So that's a job.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's an institution of social control. It's there to protect some people and not others. And it's been diversified. But it was an institution, I would say, of white supremacy that arose under white supremacy. A lot of our institutions were like that. We now have a black president, black mayor. Not much has changed. The institutions are the problem. It's not any one person. And so, that's why I think you can see, and that's also why it makes it harder to, point out to people. Is a black cop racist if he's beating up black people? It's kind of tough questions to unravel. But I think that's why it's a systemic problem. We have to change the systems. It's not any individual, racist actor.
So one more question up here, Vivek, and then I'm going to come over here. I realize I've been neglecting you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I have two references that I'm citing. The first one was in the preface of Michelle Alexander's book. She explains that the problem has to go beyond beyond just ending incarceration, but ending racial caste. 2 was actually a quote from Lee Atwater. You know who he is? He was Ronald Reagan's political strategist, and he actually detailed the Southern strategy pretty accurately. He said, quote, "You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 68, you can't say nigger, so you go on to say stuff like forced busing or states' rights and later on you start talking about cutting government program, which sounds like it, the probability is blacks will suffer, but it's so abstract. It's a lot more abstract than busing, and a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger. So basically, the crux I'm trying to get to is, even if we do end the mass incarceration system, how can we ensure that something new won't come up to continue the system of exclusion?
Well, there's no guarantee. I mean, you have to be vigilant. The battle goes on. I mean, it would be crazy to think that there won't be the attempt to do the next thing. Of course, there will be the attempt to do the next thing, and we just have to, like, nobody. I don't know if anybody saw this coming as the strategy after the end of Jim Crow. I mean, they were really clever. And actually, speaking of those terms, just listen to, now the terms are, like in the last presidential election, it was the reiteration of food stamps, whatever the word food stamps, that was another way of, like, talking about black folk, right? There were various ways they do this, right? So anyway, there is going to be, suppose we're successful and we, like, bring the prison population down to like 10% of what it is now or whatever, and it's just, serious violent, whatever. They'll be looking for something else. You're absolutely right about that. And we just have to be on the ball, watching for what that next move is going to be and get there before then and stop it.
It could be something with drones. It could be something.
Who knows?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the internet is very, who knows? I mean, what they could do with the tools they have now.
What?
But it's becoming harder to fool educated people, especially as they talk. And this is the era of mass communication where everybody's online and so many things are brought out. But asking that question is like asking, when is the capitalist system going to stop exploiting workers? Mm-hmm. That's what it was created for. So there's always going to be those attempts. We just have to be vigilant in our fight against it.
And can I follow up on that? I mean, I think part of what we have to do is any movement to end mass incarceration has to be led by the people who are most impacted, people of color. And that's one way to try and stay ever vigilant of a new racist system popping up. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, we can, like, there's fiscal conservatives who now want to, like, decrease the prison population because it's so expensive, so we should really tone down our rhetoric, not talk about race, just talk about economic issues. And I think that's a guaranteed way to continue a racial caste system in some other form. Or when the economy picks back up again, they'll just go for locking up more people again. But I think one of the real ways that you would stop it is you would restructure some of the economy. I think that you can trace today's system back to slavery, and when slavery was defeated, there was the possibilities for redistributing a lot of the wealth to the black community, to some of the poor white farmers as well, but it didn't happen. And again, the civil rights movement, I think what didn't happen was there was legal equality, but there was no restructuring, no pouring of money into these poor black communities. And I think what we would have to do is we would have to really redistribute a lot of the wealth, take it from the super, super rich and give it to, poor communities, and especially poor communities of color. And to tie into capitalism, I mean, I think race is used as a divide among working people so that they can screw us all over. I mean, they're going to screw over different forms of people more, and people of color bear the worst brunt of it under capitalism. But, race has been used to divide people continually. I mean, read about it, like, black and white workers trying to organize just after slavery ended. They try and use racism to divide us. Same thing, civil rights movement. So, it's really important to understand how race has been used by the, 1%, the teeny, super rich elite.
So, are there any questions waiting over here that I've just been my peripheral vision or not?
I really want to follow that question up, but obviously there's a call to action in the film, and I was wondering what, from your experiences, what you believe or what you've experienced to be the most effective, whether it's education or organizing movements or even like becoming, like going to law school, like getting those degrees, like figuring out how to work from within or from the outside, what you find to be the most effective? Or if it's just kind of a conglomerate of all of it.
Kind of one thing that I definitely wanted to say was all of it. I mean, I think all of it's really important, and I think all of it's really interconnected. I mean, so if we're here doing education, then we're motivating people to organize. And from there, it's spreading the word. And I think that it all just kind of rolls together. And I think it's important, you know, whether you want to study law or whether you want to be a teacher, whether you want to be a cop, or whether you want to be a social worker, or whatever you know, field you want to go into, it's important, kind of to sum up what Nat was saying earlier, it's like, it's important for us to be in every facet of society in order to kind of maintain the changes that, you know, that we're making.
I'm very focused on education. All of our clients who come through, we try to, they don't have a GED, get your GED. If they do, we try to put them in Philadelphia Community College, any sort of vocational training programs. We try to show them that in order for us to change the system, we have to educate ourselves. The things that I teach, the workshops I do, the counseling, I'm doing the same thing that I did behind the wall. I'm no smarter now than I was then, but I've got a degree now, I'm in a master's degree program, and now people are starting to listen to what I say. But it's the same thing. But education makes a difference, a vital difference.
I think it's, in our context, clearly the thing that we have to do is educate ourselves about this issue. We have to find out about it. We have to be able to talk about it to people who don't know about it. And that takes a little bit of work. It's not enough to just sort of passively read the book. You have to think about, what is it saying? What do I say to somebody if I want to bring this up? How do I talk about this? So we have to, in our context, we're talking really about educating ourselves, spreading the word. But if you want to do things beyond that, as of course you do in your life, or even right now, these are the people to hook up with. Right? They're doing things. Find out what they're doing and get involved. I just want to say, we mentioned a couple times Greatersburg. There's this prison nearby, and a lot of people sort of know about it, or some people don't even know about it. But if you stand over there on the hill above the softball field and look out to the north at night, there's this bright lit area back there. It looks like it might be some baseball diamond or something. That's the prison. I mean, you can see it from here. It's all lit up over there. It's in our neighborhood, and we don't really know anything about it. And we have to find out about it.
Let's see, can I take a, Leah, I know you're ready.
How easy is it, like, once incarcerated to gain access to resources to appeal your decision? Like, how difficult is it once, like, the decision, you said there was time restraints. Is it difficult? I mean, I assume so, it sounds like it, but.
As far as re-entry, unless you have children, like if you're a woman, you have children, baby coming out. But for a man, no matter what, it's on the side. Oh, well, as far as with the appeal process, like I said, it's a year. Post-conviction Relief Act, that killed everything. It killed habeas corpus, it killed direct appeals. You got everything's on time. So see, what you don't understand, that you have to understand, is when you're being processed through the system, you might not get to make a phone call for 30 days. You're in quarantine, you're locked down, then you go from Philadelphia to Camp Hill, and that's the classification unit. You go through a process there. Now, you might, you're waiting for money to get there, you're waiting for your phone list to be cleared. So the courts don't take all that into consideration. Your time is still taken, and your lawyer's already abandoned you. So most people don't have the money for a lawyer, and if you don't study the law or take it upon yourself, you're time barred. Once you're time barred, that's it. Doesn't matter. Anything could come later down the line, proof So there's no mechanism for that either. But that's a big component on why the jails stay crowded. It's because you can't even and then your public defenders, they most of the time they just tell you to plead guilty. They don't fight your case. They don't do research. You're totally ambushed. So it's just like it's not even a real process. It's just.
We got one more question. Can I go, Shakia?
I have a question regarding the 13th Amendment. And it reads, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And what does this mean for mass incarceration, and can it reappear if we are to reduce the problem within 10 years because of the existence of the 13th Amendment?
It's actually striking. The wording actually says, no slavery except.
Right.
So it actually says there can still be slavery.
Right.
Yeah.
There is slavery.
Yeah.
Right.
I was a slave for 18 years. You know, there was no doubt in my mind that I was owned by the system. You know, if I tried to climb that wall, and guys did, they were going to kill me. So you own me until my time is up and I go. I mean, it's that simple.
So what does that mean for mass incarceration? Can't the problem always exist?
It needs to be repealed.
Is there?
I don't know if any of you guys saw that PBS documentary about the peonage system after the end of the Civil War. And that language is actually carefully cultivated because there's the expectation that right at the end of the Civil War, they could exploit in mass the labor force of African Americans in the South. And so what's actually been held consistent is the percentage of African Americans in prison. It's like 1867, there were 35 to 36% of African Americans in our jails. So guess what it is today? I think it's 38%, right? So that number is actually held consistent for most of our history. But that 13th Amendment, that language was carved into the amendment explicitly, intentionally, so that essentially a certain class could exploit the other class for material gain.
In addition to that, sorry, I just want to throw something out there real quick too. In addition to that, it wasn't until February 7th of this year that Mississippi ratified the 13th Amendment. So until 2013,
they lost the paper.
Yeah, they lost that paperwork. But until 2013, in this country, slavery was still legally justified, not to even speak about the codified form that we're talking about.
Then you also had a Dred Scott decision, where Justice Taney said that blacks have no rights a white man is bound to respect. That's still in place, you know. So I mean, it's there. It's not being dealt with, you know. They're telling you the highest court in the land. I mean, this is there. So.
And in terms of the mass incarceration aspect of this, I mean, to what degree is our society, you know, creating a situation in which it's possible to incarcerate a huge amount of people and then use them for cheap labor to build furniture for our universities? Like, if you think about it, I mean, looking at Corbett's recent budget, or at least the budget of 2013, some of the schools, like the Philadelphia school district was cut like $1,000 per, or over $1,000 per student per year. When we think about that, you know, we're decreasing education in the neighborhoods that probably need it the most. And to what degree are we systematically creating, you know, situations where people are more likely to find themselves incarcerated? And I mean, we're creating this mass incarceration, and I think that the 13th Amendment really is, like how you put it, I mean, the wording is frightening, and it's allowing this to happen.
So on a final note, this is not the last thing you're going to hear, not last time you're going to hear about this. there's the people who organize this, students, are going to do some other things, and you'll be hearing about it. Watch for it. Meanwhile, pick up the book and read it, or borrow it from somebody who took my class, or come to my class in the fall, whatever. But there's going to be more, and just listen up. Or we have some handouts where you can get a hold of these people and get involved in some of their activities if you want. So I personally want to thank everybody for coming. This was really great. Thank you very much.
Actually, we have a final comment from Matt.
Yeah, I just want to say that as you're going out or up here, there's a sign-up sheet for Decarcerate PA to get more info about that organization that we can also, give to the organizers of this event to make sure that, people who want to get involved can get involved. There's you can sign the YASP petition that's right up there, and you can also sign a sign-up sheet for the movie to help promote and to hear when it's playing in another city or state. And there's some DVDs and T-shirts for sale down here for $20 if you want to come down and check it out afterwards. And thank you so much for hosting us, and it's great to sit here with all of you all, like such a great panel too.
So a few final notes of my own. As one of the organizers of this event, we want to let you know that one of the events that Roger Florka just alluded to is a poetry slam that's going to be in late March. So please come out to that. You'll be hearing more about it. And if you want information about that and other things that are going on, feel free to sign the sheet that's just outside the door. You will be getting emails from us, and you can also sign a sheet to get emails, a newsletter from Decarcerate PA. So feel free to come down here and look at the merch and to sign what you will and to talk with whoever is waiting around. So thanks for coming out. And